Hi there, folks, and welcome to today's product announcement, a special live stream. I'm your host for today. I'm Nate. I'm a technical marketing manager with Red Hat Enterprise Linux, and I'm here to tell you all about the latest and greatest in RHEL 10. That is Red Hat Enterprise Linux 10. If you were at Summit, you may have gotten some of these announcements already out of the way, but we're going to go a little bit deeper on some of them that maybe you might have missed, or maybe that you didn't get as much information as you wanted. I've got a lot of content to cover today, so I'm going to ask that if you do have questions that you want to ask while I'm presenting, I will be watching the chat, but I'm not going to be answering questions in line. There are probably some Red Hatters in the chat that might be able to help you out, but I'm more than happy to wait at the end of the presentation for anyone who has questions that want to ask them. Then I'll answer them on stream. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. All right. So, like I said, if you haven't heard, Red Hat Enterprise Linux 10 was announced just this past week with Red Hat Summit in Boston. And we've got a bunch of nice new features. A lot of these are also coming to RHEL 9.6. We're going to talk about some Lifecycle. We're also going to talk about some of the future direction for RHEL. So, you're going to want to stick in all the way to the end to get some of that additional sort of what's coming next information. All right. So, a couple of marquee things that I want to mention at the very beginning. Of course, I'd like to introduce you to some of the highlights now included with Red Hat Enterprise Linux 10. First of all is image mode. You're probably already aware of what image mode is. We've had it in RHEL since 9.4, but that was in tech preview, and now it's moving out of tech preview and into fully supported mode. We'll talk more about image mode in a bit. Second is the new RHEL Lightspeed command line assistant. Now, this is some really cool technology that, again, we're going to get a little bit deeper into, but this is a new way to get help from RHEL right at the console without having to go sift through all the documentation when you're in sort of a panic situation. Third, RHEL 10 brings a new initiative to help defend your data against the looming threat of quantum computing. You might ask, why is that a threat? Well, we're going to get into that a little bit. It has to do with cryptography and some of the steps that RHEL is taking to be post-quantum resistant. And fourth, last but not least here, is the Insights Advisor in Satellite. Customers have long asked for the ability to leverage Insights on premises, and now we're bringing Advisor to your data center. All right, so let's go ahead and get right into the technology here. All right, so this is divided into a couple of sections. We're going to try to group things based on the things they're supposed to try to address, right? So this requires a certain amount of skill, and Red Hat has been working to make RHEL even easier to deploy and manage for decades. In that time, we've built a wealth of knowledge around Linux, and it's time that we put that knowledge at your fingertips when you need it the most. And the first big announcement coming around with that in mind is the command line assistant. So these are the command line assistant and the Insights Image Builder package recommendations are underneath the RHEL Lightspeed umbrella. The command line assistant is powered by RHEL Lightspeed. Like I said, it's an optional Gen AI assistant available within RHEL's command line interface. The command line assistant can help with several tasks, such as answering RHEL-related questions, assisting with troubleshooting, assisting with deciphering log entries, and lots of other things. The command line assistant provides a natural language interface. And like I said, we're going to show you that in just a second. I don't have a live demo. We'll give you some screenshots. You can bet we're going to be talking more about this with some live demos and whatnot. And this is coming with both RHEL 10 and RHEL 9.6. And the other big Lightspeed announcement is the Insights Image Builder package recommendations. What this does is at the point where you're trying to build a new image with Insights Image Builder, it'll give you package recommendations based on what you've got selected and what other customers have installed related to those packages. These aren't just dependencies. You might call them soft dependencies, right? This package usually means you want this other one too. And again, we're going to show a little bit more about that in a second. But first of all, this command line assistant that we talked about. Here's an example of what the command line assistant looks like literally at the RHEL console. So you can see here a screenshot that we're asking the command line assistant a question: help me troubleshoot SSHD failing to start. And then it responds with a very polite answer. It's very sorry to hear that we're having trouble with SSHD, but it gives you some suggestions on what you can do to check the status of the SSHD service, and even some more deeper introspection there for how to get some information out of journal CTL. Now, to a seasoned system administrator, this might not look like much, but imagine if you could, for me 30 years ago when I was at the command line for the first time and I'm trying to figure out how to do something, this information would have been invaluable then. Now, back then we didn't have AI assistants, but today you do. So you can easily hand this maybe off to your junior administrator, or perhaps it's 2 o'clock in the morning and you just can't remember the syntax for that SE Linux relabel that you've done 100 times. And the command line assistant is here to help you with those. All right, I talked about the package recommendations in Insights Image Builder. Just to summarize, this is, and you can see this today, this was included with Insights Image Builder previous to RHEL 10, but we're announcing it here with 10, but it's a very recent addition. You can see in the example here, you're going through package installations inside of Insights Image Builder while you're designing your new image, and you've said, I'd like to install realmd. Well, Lightspeed knows that a lot of people who install realmd also install ADCLI, because they're probably going to join this system to an Active Directory domain. Now, maybe you're not, but if you are and you forgot to add that package, then you would have gotten all the way through the installation process before you realize this tool that you needed post-installation now has to be installed. So the idea here is that this is meant to help you identify those packages before it's too late, so that you don't have to go back and rebuild that image and redeploy. All right, we've got some web console improvements coming as well. Organizations can now use a package-less session. So if you're familiar with web console, you know that web console manage more than just the system it's installed on. It can reach out to remote systems as well. Previously, those remote systems needed sort of a smaller subset of web console installed on them in order to facilitate those connections. And now you can do it without having to install that smaller bit, right? So there's now a little bit less that has to be installed, smaller package footprint, smaller attack surface, you might say, on your target systems. And that just makes things a lot easier to manage. Also, let's see here, the RHEL Web Console also supports configuring Stratus file systems. It used to be that there were features in there, but now they've been extended to help you with the file system size limits. There's also a new text editor that's built into the file browser, and there's the ability to manage high availability clusters through the web console as well. So some new additions to web console, again, trying to make RHEL easier for you and perhaps your less experienced administrators to use. Okay, now containing drift. Systems management is all about delivering systems quickly and mitigating drift from the moment you deploy them forward, pretty much into, forever. RHEL 10 includes features that are meant to help you solve both problems, both building and deploying those systems and mitigating that drift from there on out. Image mode. We talked about image mode at the beginning. If you're not familiar with image mode, I highly recommend you check it out. I think this is a really neat feature. I've been toying with it a bit since RHEL 9.4, and the more I learn about it, the more I work with it, the more I talk to customers about it, the more ideas I come up with and how this thing might be useful. So image mode, if you're not familiar, what it does is it takes the sort of variability of a package mode system. That's what we're calling sort of classic RHEL systems, or the way you're used to installing RHEL from this day, from the point of beginning up until now. That is, you install RHEL and then you just DNF install the things that you want. With that sort of setup, it works just fine, but it's really easy for package drift, right? So somebody logs into your system, they really need, I don't know, Wireshark or TCP dump to troubleshoot this particular problem that they're trying to solve, and then they leave it there, right? Well, in a container world, you have systems, I shouldn't even say systems, you have applications that are designed to be containerized and deployed all in an image, right? And then that image becomes disposable. You have persistent storage, of course, but the application itself is just, you deploy it, you attach your storage, you run the thing. When it needs an update, you just replace it, right? With image mode, it sort of takes both worlds and blends them together. You've got a standard RHEL system, but it's deployed more like an image or like a container. You build an image that's very similar to a container image, although it's a bootable container. It comes with things like a kernel and boot information, so that when it's deployed to a system, it actually writes it out to the file system of that system. And then when you need to update that system in the future, you make a new image, you push it up to your container registry, and then you pull it down using a special command line tool called bootsy, and it overwrites that local file system. Now, of course, there is persistent data in there. I'm not going to delve too deeply into all the technology there. We can certainly talk more about image mode if anybody has questions. But so when I say it looks like a container file when you deploy this thing or when you build these images, I literally mean it. You can see in the screenshot here. If you've ever built a container from a container file, that is what the container file looks like. That's obviously a very simplified example, but you can see you base it on a bootsy image. So you see that from line at the top. You can then run commands against it. You can add applications and configuration files, and then you build it using Podman or using Podman Desktop, or really whatever your container toolchain of choice is, and get that up into your registry. Once it's in your registry, you then deploy it to your RHEL systems, and then from that point forward, you manage those RHEL systems through that image instead of directly on systems. So you wouldn't be connecting to these systems and making local changes, although you can do that to some extent. Generally, you're going to be doing everything in this container image or this bootsy image, and then you'll deploy it to your system. The really cool thing is if you deploy if you deploy an update to a system and it doesn't work properly, you can roll it back in seconds. You just literally tell it, roll back, reboot the system, and it comes back up on the old image, which is actually really nice. All right, so if you can't tell, right, this makes systems a lot easier to maintain and manage. It sort of helps contain that drift like we were talking about, and it's really a nicer way to deal with your systems. There's also, coming with RHEL 10, the ability to build your bootsy images from scratch, right? Because customers really want to be able to customize those systems. You can do that in a number of ways through things like Image Builder and whatnot. And compliance hardening for RHEL image mode. Organizations can now apply various profiles such as STIG, PCI, and CIS benchmarks in that container file, right? So while you're building the image, you can say, apply this compliance policy, and it'll go ahead and harden that image before it even goes to your registry. So that moves that security even further to the left, right? So before you're even deploying this image, it's already got your hardening in place, which, again, really nice addition. All right. Flexible choice of management. Oh, right. So obviously, if it's not clear, we want image mode to be managed in the same way that RHEL, right? It's just delivered a little bit differently. We want you to be able to use the same tool set and whatnot, right? So that means that we want to keep that management experience in line as we introduce more image operations. Today, Insights has some basic capabilities for managing and updating image mode hosts, as well as providing the typical recommendations and whatnot for RHEL. Deeper integration with Insights and other parts of the management portfolio, like Satellite and Ansible, are on the roadmap. Also, we should mention here that Quay.io works as a really good container registry that you could be using to manage these image mode images, right? So the concept here is that you'll be able to use your same old management tools that you already like managing your RHEL infrastructure with image mode. All right, and like I mentioned at the beginning, Insights Advisor in Satellite. So if you're not familiar with Advisor, this was sort of the flagship, the first service that we deployed with Insights, where if you set up your systems to report to Insights, then a small profile is built for your systems, and it's sent to Insights. And then Insights will give you analytics and suggestions, recommendations within Advisor. Now, there's a bunch of other things that happen on the hybrid cloud console when it comes to Insights. But the Advisor, sort of the first and flagship thing. What we're introducing now is with Satellite 617, the ability to install a module inside of Satellite that will bring Insights Advisor on premises, right? A lot of customers over the years have said, we like the concept of advisor. We like the idea that we can get this proactive analytics, but we just can't send our data into the cloud. Our InfoSec team won't let us, or we have compliance regulations that say that we can't. So now what we're doing here is this is the first step in bringing an on-premises version of Insights to your data center. So really good, really a great step forward for folks who have those requirements. Okay, and then of course I already hinted at Satellite 617. There's a couple new features coming with Satellite 617. Managing RHEL like a container means some adjustments to how Satellite needs to work with image mode hosts. Satellite now supports the distribution of image mode deployments and provisioning and management as well. Support for Flatpak content. So Flatpak, if you're not familiar, it's another way of packaging up certain applications. Really popular for desktop apps, but that's not really the only use for it. Satellite 617 brings better support for Flatpak content. Secure boot support. So Satellite 617 now supports secure boot provisioning on bare metal, VMware vSphere, and libvirt platforms. So this provides some enhanced security during provisioning workflows. And IPv6 support, because any day now we're going to be out of IPv4. Right, so there you go. You can now use IPv6 for deployments and whatnot within Satellite 617. System roles. We've got some new system roles coming. So the new system role for AID, which is the Advanced Intrusion Detection Environment. It automates the installation and configuration of AID by initializing AID itself and updating the AID database, including running integrity checks, enabling organizations to more easily deploy and manage AID at scale in larger environments. Additionally, the Podman system role assists organizations in automating the configuration of Podman across RHEL environments more consistently by adding support for the configuration of pods within Quadlet. So if you're not familiar with Podman pods or Quadlet, I could go on. I love these features, but Quadlet is a way to deploy containers using systemd, right? And now we have support for Quadlet to be able to deploy Podman pods instead of just containers. So nice extra feature there. And lastly, the systemd system role can now manage systemd user level units, right? So previously, the systemd system role would only manage the system level systemd units. There's a lot of the word system here. It's hard to say. And then now we can manage the user level as well. So if you're not familiar with that, users can make systemd units and store them inside of their home directories, right? That's one of the nice features of systemd. Now we can do that with the systemd system role as well. Okay. All right. Making better build time decisions. Or decisions at build time anyway. So shifting left means making choices before you deploy. And in RHEL 10, we're giving you more tools to get that done. All right, compliance hardening for image mode. We kind of touched on this earlier, but if you're building RHEL as an image to deploy, it just makes sense to apply your compliance policies at build time rather than after deployment. So we're adding the capability to do just that in RHEL image mode. The domain join feature via Insights for Red Hat IDM domains. Okay, so this is actually, I was able to toy with it a little bit a couple weeks back. But basically, there's now a method where you can register your IDM domain to the hybrid cloud console through Insights. Now, this doesn't mean that your IDM domain is reporting to Insights. It's more or less an identifier or a configuration entry within the hybrid cloud console. And then there's some packages you need to install on your IDM domain. And then what you do is when you're building a new image, not image mode, sorry, when you're building a new image with Image Builder, you can install those extra packages, right? There's these extra packages that make this work. And then when you deploy a system, if it matches the domain that's registered with Insights, and you register the system that you're building with Insights, what it'll do is it'll say, oh, I'm supposed to be part of this IDM domain, and it'll just auto-join it using the tokens that are exchanged with the hybrid cloud console. So it's a nice way to stop building tokens or authentication or whatnot into your images that may be a problem if it ever gets lost or compromised, or may be a problem if you ever have to change it, right? So now this just one more way to get yourself registered with an IDM domain without having to exchange secrets. All right, some more insights planning for RHEL features. If you've ever built yourself a base image or had to choose a set of supported packages environment, you might know how important it is to plan for the future. And of course, we don't have any crystal balls, right? So knowing how long the support for lifecycle is for a given package, or what the roadmap looks like for a feature, at that point, when you're deciding what packages to install, is actually pretty important. And currently, what that means is digging through documentation, digging through roadmaps, digging through our support policies and our lifecycle page and our package lifecycles. And to be honest, it's kind of a lot. And it's, if any of that changes for any reason, or if you're reevaluating another new package, we know it's a bit of work for you, right? So we're trying to make that easier for folks with the next couple of features that you're about to see. So this is the RHEL AppStream lifecycle information, which is coming with 10 to the Insights Hybrid Cloud Console. And what this is, if you're not familiar with AppStreams lets you install different versions of different packages, right? But what you might not know is that not all of those packages have the same lifecycle. They don't all have the same support lifecycle. And what this is meant to do is to help you visualize that, so that when you're installing a system, or even when you're just looking at your fleet of systems, you can see what you have installed and what's still in support, and maybe what has a long roadmap, long life cycle left on it, and what does not, right? So in this example, you can see Node.js 16 up at the top. In this example, this is actually installed on some of the systems in this test fleet here, but it's out of support. Now, sometimes you have reasons for that. Maybe you need Node.js 16 as an application dependency for something that you run. It's important. But maybe you didn't know it was out of support. And seeing that red bar there is a good indicator that it's time to update that thing, figure out, what the next, what the next platform should be. And in this case, you can see Node.js 22 is also on this list, and that's got a couple years left on its support in this example. So this is just, another way to try to make it easier for you to identify this stuff before it bites you in the butt later. Okay. We've also got roadmap information, right? So you can also see how the application application stream life cycles when using Insights Image Builder. So this is basically similar information to what I just showed you on that last slide, except also within Image Builder, not on your fleet, right? And this is the roadmap. I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself. So, and here's our RHEL roadmap, right? So one of the things that we can do well at Red Hat is we can see what's coming with all the various packages. I mean, obviously, a lot of decisions that are made about support and whatnot are things we make internally. Others come from the upstream projects that we contribute to, but we've got insight into all of those things. So we know when things are going to change, and we document those things, but again, we understand that sometimes that's hard to find, right? So with the roadmap information, you'll not only see things like what version of packages are coming, what versions of packages are supported, but also other information around maybe new features that are coming to those packages and whatnot. So this is something that you'll be able to access through Insights, and you'll be able to see, based on your registered systems, kind of a snapshot of the roadmap for things that you have installed and things that you're using. All right, RHEL 10 Image Builder. Now I'm talking about RHEL Image Builder, not Insights Image Builder, specifically on this slide here. If you're not familiar, that's the you run on your own RHEL instance versus the one that we run within Insights. You may have noticed over the years, those have sort of diverged a little bit in feature set. So RHEL 10 Image Builder now provides a similar user interface that more closely matches the Insights Image Builder interface and feature set, right? So we're trying to, bring these projects back together again. It provides new customization options and new integrations with Insights services, such as compliance and content templates, including compatibility with sharing blueprints between RHEL and Insights image builders. So if you design a blueprint on one, you can import it in the other one, and vice versa. RHEL Insights image builders also make creating highly customized and optimized images easy with RHEL 10 and 9.6, and both of these support public cloud, virtual infrastructures, and bare metal. Right? There's even the option to make an image for Microsoft's Windows subsystem for Linux. So if you haven't run RHEL inside of WSL before, now it's a supported option, or I should say, it's a developer option. All right. Cloud optimized RHEL. Now, obviously, RHEL's been running on cloud providers for probably a decade and a half already, just like most other Linux distributions. But we're bringing some improvements to how you run RHEL on the public cloud, right? So, from RHEL images that are optimized for your cloud to better integrations with cloud providers' CLI tools, monitoring and observability tools. Those are all things that we're trying to do to make RHEL a little bit better of a cloud citizen within your cloud environments. Now, we have some specifics for AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud. I'm not going to dig deeply into each one of those today, but just know that things like the CLI support is improved. We've got optimized images, like I mentioned. We have better integrations with things like the monitoring tools that are provided. For example, AWS CloudWatch. There's hooks now in RHEL using OpenTelemetry, I believe the package is called, that will exchange information with that a little more fluidly than maybe you have been able to in the past. Okay, now one of my favorite topics is security, and we're going to talk a little bit about post-quantum here, right? So security is always important, but with RHEL 10, we're making some improvements that'll help prepare you for some threats that may actually be years away at this point, but we have to think about them now because of what these threats entail. So for those who aren't already aware, quantum computing is a major security threat, or it can be, right? It's looming on the horizon. Post refers to the ability to protect your information after quantum computers become more available to attackers. Now, I'm not talking about, hackers that have quantum computers in their basements. I'm talking more about nation states that are probably harvesting all of our data right now, and in the hopes that they will be able to decrypt it later, right? So after quantum computers become more available, it's estimated that a current algorithm, in some cases, on a current state of x86 machine, could take possibly trillions of years to break a decently encrypted RSA 2048 encryption standard today, right? Now, if you're not familiar with how encryption works, basically, most things aren't unbreakable, but it's really sort of silly to try to break something that's encrypted, because that's encrypted RSA 2048 in this example, because it would take you so long to decrypt it that it would be useless by the time you got it, if you were even still around when it finished, right? With quantum computing, they estimate that you could break that same RSA 2048 in as little as 10 seconds, which is kind of scary. If you think about it, think about the sort of data that we have encrypted today, sort of data in transit and whatnot that could be getting collected, that could be easily broken in the future. So because of that, we've already got organizations like NIST looking into new standards that are resistant to quantum computers as well as standard, x86 computers today. In RHEL 10, obviously, we don't have all the standards yet, so we can't claim to be post-quantum, ready or post-quantum certified, because there isn't a certification yet. But we're starting to deploy those algorithms, and we're starting to develop a crypto policy that will allow you to switch your systems over to a quantum-ready state, so that as these algorithms are developed and as they're released, you'll be able to deploy them in RHEL 10. Now, this isn't currently in 9.6. Most of the features we're talking about today are. But currently the roadmap says this is coming in RHEL 9.7. So keep an eye out for that. Also keep in mind that with older releases of RHEL, such as RHEL 8 and 9, we have to really keep in mind what could possibly break, because we have a long life cycle on those two releases. So it's possible that with RHEL 8 and RHEL 9, we may not get 100% of the way there. But with RHEL 10, the goal is to do so. And with hopefully with RHEL 11, all these things will be standardized, and we'll be able to say RHEL 11 is ready to go for a post-quantum world. So you'll be more ready for those compliance standards, and you can bet they're coming. So, get that clipboard and your checklist out. Okay, FIPS validation. So plus we've simplified the FIPS module in RHEL 10 to make it easier for you to develop FIPS compliant applications on containers, VMs, or bare metal with the flip of a switch, right? So FIPS, this can sometimes be kind of a slog when it comes to getting new applications or even new releases of RHEL validated. So we're changing the way in which that validation has to happen. I shouldn't say the validation. We're changing the way we package the libraries that need to be validated, so that between releases of RHEL, they don't have to be revalidated, because getting that certification can take up to 300 days, right? So imagine we release a new version of RHEL, takes 300 days to get it validated, or you're developing an application that needs to be FIPS certified, takes 300 days to get it validated. That's kind of unacceptable. So we're trying to make it easier to validate that module instead of the entire application or the entire operating system. So that's another change with 10. Okay. Hardware security module support for IDM. This is a tech preview feature. This will enable users to store keys and secrets separate from the software in a secure, tamper-protected environment, right? So this is using the hardware security module within your system or virtual machine to store things like IDMs, certificate secrets, and things like that. This is, like I said, a new feature, tech preview. So keep your eye on this if you're interested in that level of security for your stored secrets with IDM. The RHEL extensions repository. This is actually, I think it's an interesting little feature, but we're adding a new repository to RHEL 10 that will do things like track upstream projects that maybe we can't offer full support on, but we can give you a secure software supply chain, right? So these are packages that will be built and signed by Red Hat. They'll be put into this extensions repository. And then if you have compliance standards that say you have to be able to vet where the software came from, you'll be able to check that box because Red Hat signed it. But the package itself will be supported by the community that supports that project, right? It's not a directly supported by Red Hat feature or Red Hat package. So keep that in mind for, I think Podman Desktop is in there on day one. There's a second package that I'm having trouble remembering at the moment. But we have some ideas for what else might come to these repositories or this repository for the future. So keep an eye on those for some of those maybe difficult to get a hold of packages that maybe you might have been getting from Apple or something before. Now you'll be able to get them, not all of Apple, but that's an example from this extensions repository. Okay, the Security Select add-on. This isn't a direct feature of RHEL 10. It's not like a software feature, but it's a new program, an add-on that you can purchase if you're in an environment that really cares about what CVEs get fixed with a release of RHEL. So you might be aware that as we move through the life cycle of RHEL, when you get to that extended lifecycle phase, or even in the extended update support phases, the level of security vulnerability that we will fix automatically goes down to critical importance, right? So if there are CVEs that are not labeled critical and important, previously you'd have to make a case to get them fixed. Sometimes they would, sometimes they wouldn't. What the Security Select add-on does is you pay a yearly fee to get a 10 pack of CVE fixes. And you can say, this CVE right here, that's important to my organization. I would like you to fix that now. And you can go ahead and then we'll put engineering time on getting that thing fixed. So this is, customers have asked for this sort of program, and now it's available. All right. All right. So, but that's not all. We've got a couple more notable features that I wanted to cover today. RISC-V. So Red Hat's announcing the availability of a RHEL 10 developer preview for a single RISC-V platform to give the developer community access to a combination of RISC-V and RHEL. So RISC-V is an emerging CPU design and instruction set. This architecture is free to use, no royalties or fees. The initial implementations are positioned as an open source hardware standard, as everything that the designer would need is freely available to the public domain. So this is a big contrast to the other standard CPU designs from like Intel, AMD, and ARM, all of which are either proprietary or they carry royalty fees for use, right? So RISC-V designs are experiencing rapid adoption across all market areas of interest to Red Hat, things like edge and automotive, and in the not too distant future, maybe even things like data center servers. So Red Hat's decided to build a developer preview of the RHEL 10 on a single RISC-V developer board, and that board is the Sci5 Hi5 P550. So we did have a demo of this at Summit. I unfortunately did not have the time to check it out, but it seems like a pretty cool technology. So if you're interested in RISC-V, you should check into it. All right. We have some new developer features and libraries with RHEL 10 and 9.6. So the newest releases of these packages are PHP 3, Nginx 1.26, Git 2.47, Maven 3.9, MySQL 8.4, and of course that support that I mentioned earlier to build images for the Windows subsystem for Linux. So all useful things. All right, and as always, with all the new features come some features that are going away, and I'd be remiss to not tell you about them in this live stream. So, supported CPUs, we've got the x86 64 ISA version 3 and newer chips. Okay, this is the instruction architecture version 3. So chips that are certified as ISA v3 are what's certified for RHEL 10. So this would be things like the Haswell and newer Intel CPUs and the Excavator and newer AMD CPUs. There's some specific cases where Atom processors that meet the timing, right? The release for these are not necessarily ISA version 3 compatible, just because of the purpose-built nature of some of the Atom CPUs, right? So the infrastructure set, the instruction set architecture defines like what features are in the CPU. Some Atom CPUs don't necessarily meet that. So you have to look into that a little more closely to make sure that they're validated. i686 is gone. No more 32-bit binaries or libraries are going to be compiled for RHEL 10. Okay, RHEL 10 will support Wayland only for its display system. Xorg is being removed, and with Xorg support gone, many technologies that require Xorg are also gone, such as VNC. The packages that are required, or the packages for VNC required Xorg, and therefore we no longer support VNC. RDP has replaced VNC. And the SCAP workbench tool. I know a lot of folks still use this to customize their SCAP policies. Unfortunately, that also required Xorg, and because Xorg's gone, we can no longer support it. There's other tools such as the Insights Compliance tool that can help customize your SCAP policies. Also, Tomcat is back. It's not going away. It's just an update I want to tell you about. You might remember that it was removed in RHEL 8, and then it returned in a point release of 9. It's also included in RHEL 10. Some networking changes. ISC has dropped support for the ISC DHCP client and daemon. They're being replaced with ISC's own replacement project, which is Key DHCP. And IP tables is still deprecated. It would have been gone, I promise, when we came to RHEL 10, but some layered products such as OpenShift still depend on it, right? So we couldn't remove it because products that depend on it are still using it. So if you're still using IP tables, we recommend moving to NF tables, or of course you can just use Firewall D to manage NF tables, and then you wouldn't even notice the change. A translation tool called IP Tables Translate exists to help you move. All right, now we get some future direction. So we've got a couple slides here for a couple of the different sort of topics within RHEL and what we see as the future. RHEL 10 will continue to implement the post-quantum standards as they're developed. RHEL 9 will also benefit from some of this work. The caveat that I mentioned earlier about we don't want to break anything in RHEL 10 or RHEL 9. But as they can, they'll be implemented in RHEL 9 as well. Like I said, 9.7 is the target for that, where we're going to start keeping it sort of in parity with RHEL 10. We'll continue to expand confidential computing support. More of the shift left capabilities, like we talked about with the the domain join that I talked about earlier. So you should expect to see more image builder based shift left capabilities from a security standpoint, and also with image mode integrations. And we'll continue to work on the zero trust through authentication, authorization, and identity management. Right, so that's a big deal for some industries. Of course, we continue work there. From a management tools perspective, you can expect to see better integration with image mode and system roles, both for managing mode systems and for managing C, which is the tool you use to manage image mode systems, or I should say to deploy images to image mode systems. Web console and insights connectivity is also on the roadmap. So connectivity between the web console and insights, and broader container management with web console. All right. Image mode will continue to improve, of course, with image sealing software support, so that not all updates or changes require a full reboot as they do today. Storage implementation or storage improvements are also coming for both Podman and bootc, and custom live ISO and PXE image creation. Now, again, these are all like roadmap, off in the future things. Your mileage may vary, things may change, right? But this is the direction that we're thinking. All right, agentic man for and automation using MCP with RHEL. So this is basically ways to manage RHEL systems, or I should say communicate with RHEL systems using AI agents. So that's something coming with the AI foundations. Further expansions of the extensions repository to better support AI workloads and whatnot. And RHEL Lightspeed, we're investigating if we can bring the command line assistant functionality on premises. It's probably one of the biggest questions I got at Summit. When people saw the command line assistant, they asked, "Can I do this on premises?" Just like they have been asking for insights forever. But we're looking to support disconnected and other use cases where an on-premises solution is needed. We'll also be making incremental improvements to improve the user experience and evaluating emerging technologies such as MCP mentioned earlier. All right. We talked about the extensions repository earlier as well. There are plans to expand this to RHEL 9 as well. And like I said, the extensions repository, that's going to bring in probably more content as it lives on, as people start making requests for more content to be added there. Let's see, the extensions repo is targeted towards the RHEL user that has restrictions on content from a non-trusted source. Everything is built and signed by Red Hat and follows the third-party support policy with CVE communications and from Red Hat via errata. This starts with RHEL 10 at launch, and 9 will be late Q2, early Q3. Right? Again, sometimes these things slide, but this is the information we're getting from project management at the moment, product management. Extensions are sourced from EPEL to start, and we're evaluating other sources in the future. Okay, let's see here. Cloud roadmap. We're looking at better observability. I already talked about observability, things like CloudWatch and whatnot, but we're working on enabling more useful observability for hyperscaler admins so that they have the information that they need to manage their RHEL fleet along with the rest of their instances through the hyperscaler dashboards, providing built-in sort of it just works experience that allows customers to spend their valuable time where it matters most. Expand interaction between hyperscaler services and RHEL instances. RHEL for AWS can take advantage of AWS CLI, which gives users the ability to interact with AWS services using commands on their RHEL command line shell. Same deal with Azure CLI, provides, again, a command line interface where a RHEL system can interact with the Azure interface right from the RHEL CLI. And there's also Google Cloud command line, and more integrations are on the way to make managing your RHEL fleet through your hyperscaler provided tools easier. We're looking at expanding options for metering. So this is, instead of having to buy yearly RHEL subscriptions to map to your cloud instances, metering will be able to, you'll be able to pay for those subscriptions as you're needing them, when you need them, just like you would expect in a cloud environment, right? So the complexities of cross-provider usage and billing accounts are really not something that everyone should have to understand in order to use Red Hat software successfully. So we're trying to make this easier for folks, on cloud providers. Let's see, simplified integrations between hyperscaler accounts and Red Hat accounts, right? So you may have looked at Hybrid Cloud Console recently and noticed that there's features where you can link accounts to the Hybrid Cloud Console. Improvements are being made there. And expanding offerings in marketplaces. This is something that I know that is in process already, but we're trying to improve how well not only RHEL, but RHEL add-ons show up within the cloud marketplaces. So good things coming. All right, container tools. Container ecosystem continues to expand with reach and compatibility. In January this year, Podman and friends, that means Builda and Scopio, were put into the CNCF sandbox along with Podman Desktop, Bootsy, and Compose FS. So these are now projects that are sort of donated to the CNCF. 10 and 9.6. Let's see here. I'm just trying to look through some of these notes here to give you the high level stuff here. Faster image pulls, right? That's right here on the slide. Opt in for Compose FS backend for faster, denser container hosts, and Podman machine enhancements. Let me see if I can get more detail on that. Enhancing the Podman machine with numerous improvements, making Podman Desktop more configurable for developers. All right, Red Hat Developer. We have the new Red Hat Enterprise Linux for Business Developer program, which is a planned self-service subscription that'll be available to members of our Red Hat Developer program. So this is sort of an expansion of the existing RHEL for Developers program. Podman Desktop is now the preferred container development container development environment for container-based RHEL workloads. Podman Desktop offers a Bootsy plugin that allows you to build bootable containers and utilize RHEL image mode. And of course, we plan to provide access to new languages, libraries, databases, tools, and the things that you need to develop workloads at a regular cadence. Okay, let's touch a little bit on product lifecycle, because obviously things sort of tick forward when we get a new release of RHEL. Obviously predictable as expected. So RHEL 7, if you're still on RHEL 7, you probably want to think about getting off of RHEL 7 because it's already in its extended lifecycle phase of support. And in fact, that's getting closer and closer to its end of support. So if you're on RHEL 7, you're going to want to move to at least RHEL 8, but I'd recommend 9 or maybe even 10 if you can get away with it. So just things to be aware of there. All right. With the release of RHEL 8, we started this 3-year predictable life cycle, right? So you get a new release of RHEL every 3 years. On this graph, you can see that we now have 3 separate releases of RHEL within that new release cycle, right? So we have RHEL 8, which has kept its 3-year promise when we released RHEL 9. You can see that on the graph here. We went from RHEL 8 is now at 6 years since it's been released. RHEL 9 is now 3 years since it's been released. And of course, now we have RHEL 10. So this graph can give you sort of a predictable life of how long each release of RHEL is going to exist. Right. So we promised that 10 years. And then, of course, 2 or 4 years of extension at the end with extended lifecycle support, depending on what your organization needs and what you're willing to purchase. And then every 6 months, we have a new point release of RHEL. So let's get a little bit into those point releases. So you can see here, we have a brand new graph for RHEL 10. This is the life cycle you can expect out of RHEL 10. So you can see we plan to go from RHEL 10.0 up until 10.10. And you'll see here that we should have RHEL 10 around until the end of 2034. So you should expect 2025. We released RHEL 10, RHEL 11. Should be 3 years from now, right? And in 10 years from now, RHEL 10 will be at the end of its life cycle. And then you're going to have to think about what to move off of 10. You'll probably have 11 or 12 to think of at that point. And of course, if you're not familiar with the life cycle of our extended update support channels, if you see every other year that bar is a little bit longer, I had some weird questions about this at Summit, so I thought I would into it just a little bit on today's live stream. Those are what's called extended update support releases. So every even release, including 10.0, 10.2, 10.4, right? You get the idea, is eligible for what's called extended update support. And what extended update support does is those critical and important security vulnerabilities will continue to be fixed on, say, in this example, 10.2 for an additional 2 or 4 years, depending on which version of extended update support you buy. The reason for that is we know some customers need to version lock for some reasons. Maybe it's, an application that requires certification on a certain release of RHEL. This way you can stay on that release for a little bit longer, and then when you're ready to move, you can hopefully move to the next extended update support version instead of the next point release. This doesn't mean that the uneven versions are any less supported. It just means they don't get that extension at the end of their 6 months. You're expected to go from, say, 10.0 to 10.1 to 10.2 to 10.3 every 6 months. If you can't do that, that's what these extended update support releases are all about. Okay, hopefully that's clear as mud. And then, of course, you can see the slide is almost identical here, but here's RHEL 9, same life cycle for RHEL 9. You can see 2022 it came out. 2032 is about when it's going to be going away. And the same thing for RHEL 8, right? This is the idea of this predictable life cycle, right? The predictable release cycle. So you don't have to sit there wondering when the next release of RHEL is going to come. And here we are sticking to our promises. All right, and we're just about at the end of our deck. I have a couple of additional resources to share with you, and then we can get to some Q&A. So first of all, here you are on our RHEL YouTube channel. You'll probably want to hit the subscribe button, because in a couple of days, we're going to be having another episode of Into the Terminal, which we took a break from for 2 weeks because of Summit. But if you like Linux and you like learning about Linux, you should check out Into the Terminal every Friday at 12 o'clock Eastern. All right. If you want to get your hands on RHEL and don't want to go through the hassle of having to install RHEL, we have a number of online labs at lab.redhat.com. Head over there. You can see there's an example here in this screenshot of one of our Podman labs, and you should, check those out if you want to get hands-on with some of the features of RHEL. We even have an open lab where you can just do whatever you want, and just sort of get an idea for what's included with RHEL. These labs are still on 9.5. We haven't had a chance to update them to 9.6 or 10, but that'll be coming in the coming months. All right. I have to mention the Red Hat accelerators. I don't have to, but I really want to mention the Red Hat accelerators, because the Red Hat Accelerator customer advocacy group, if you are a Red Hat power user and you want to be a member of a group of other Red Hat power users, and you want to have access to early roadmap and lifecycle information or presentations or technology features and whatnot before they're released to the general public underneath NDA, Red Hat accelerators might be for you. You should go to red.ht/accelerators to find out more. And that is about that for the presentation. So what I'd like to do, I'm going to stop the presentation here, and then I'm going to watch chat to see if I have any questions. So I know there could be some awkward pauses because the live stream is a little bit ahead of the questions, but hopefully that won't become too terrible. Let me switch here. All right, so let me get chat in front of me here. And if you have any questions, go ahead and throw them into chat. Also, if you had questions earlier in the live stream, like I said, I wasn't exactly able to watch them. Go ahead, throw them back into the chat now, and I will do my best to answer them. I can see there's a couple of our TAMs and other TMMs and some other Red Hatters in our chat. So maybe all of my questions have already been answered, but I'll give you guys a few minutes here. I see Shantanu had a question answered already. That's great. Thanks for joining us today, Shantanu. Glad you made it. Somehow I managed to make it through that whole deck in about an hour. That's amazing. Let's see. Why is systemd, nspawn, and podman converging in functionality? That's something I'm probably going to have to take back to. I don't have that level of insight into what that's all about. So let me jot that down, and we can see if we can get an answer for that. There's a question about any update to IDM in RHEL 10 worth mentioning. So there was the HSM support in tech preview for IDM. That's worth mentioning. Um, Beyond that, of course, it's still included. It's still supported. Oh, and the IDM domain join functionality that we talked about in that shift left section. I see Shantanu had a HashiCorp question. I don't know if I'll be able to answer that, but feel free to throw that into chat again. Looks like you did there. Okay. Does RHEL 10 show more? Yeah, I think that's another one I don't have insight into. I also think that okay, so the question was, does RHEL 10 show more integrations with the recently acquired HashiCorp portfolio? And I think it's probably too early to say yes because that's a pretty recent acquisition. Any changes that would have happened in RHEL around that are there just hasn't been time for it. So. Redbeard Enterprise Linux. Yep, there you go. I dyed this especially for Summit. Those of you who watch the show would know it was blue before Summit. It'll probably be blue again. All right. Well, I'll give everyone a couple more minutes here for the stream to catch up and see if any more questions come in. If any of you aren't already there, we have a Discord community which you could probably ask some of these questions after the stream is over. We used to have a QR code for it. Let me see if I can put it up on screen here. Here we go. So up on screen now, there's a QR code. If you wanted to join the Red Hat Enterprise Linux Discord community, you can do that. It's actually red.ht/rel-discord. And if anybody's having trouble with that invite link, it is possible. Those things sometimes expire. I guess let me know in chat and I'll try to get a better one. All right. Well, I think I'm going to close up the live stream pretty much right on time, which is, again, like I said, surprising given all the content we had to cover today. If anyone has any follow up questions, feel free to join that Discord channel, and we can try to take things up sort of offline there. And thank you to everyone who decided to show up today. I really appreciate you coming out here and participating in the chat. If you have any more follow-ups, like I said, that Discord community is the way to do it. And like I said, subscribe if you haven't, hit the like, all the things you do for content creators that you like. And with that, I think we're going to close it up. So thank you very much, and we'll catch you next time.